afternoon. The topic before me this afternoon is regulation in air transport. I am Dr. Modukwala Falabi. The introduction on this is to discuss about the SCAR, that is part of the national domain and is open to all. And for this other reason, the government assumed the jurisdiction and has suspended hundreds of millions of money in the establishment of this airport and airways for the use of commercial, private, and also for the military craft. The objective of this study is to list the requirements for registering an airline business, likewise to identify the economic control which countries exercise to bring about orderliness in the airline business. We are going to look at the list of the freedom that is available to the airline transport, which has been in existence since 1944. Likewise, we are going to discuss what the pilots used to prepare as a checklist before an aircraft take off from the ground. And lastly, we are going to discuss about the safety and control measures that must be put in place with the economic control. The economic regulation. The government of many countries carry out some economic control to make sure that international standard and recommended best practices are adhered to by airline operating within the country. What I'm trying to say is that the government of each country must enhance to see to the development and control of the aircraft by recommending the best practice that must be adhered by all the airlines operating within that country. Part of such is the entry. The entry in many countries, no air carrier may engage in any air transportations unless there is a certificate that is being issued by the government body or the agency that is authorizing such air carrier to engage in such transportations. The kind of the certificate that will be given to anyone that want to be involved in air carrier is the air operating certificate, which represents the minimum international civil operation organization that is being referred to as high standard. This entry also involves financial capability. Financial capability in the sense that there must be a direct linkage between the financial capability and the safety requirement of the air transport. This financial capability must go along with the way and manner that they may apply to maintain when the air is supposed to be maintained. Airworthiness. Airworthiness of craft is another technical checks and maintenance that must be done and must be put into consideration before license is being given. The qualified personnel. The qualified personnel must be a licensed person with knowledge, skill, and experience. And the route structures. The route structures approved for airline by the government must be adapted. The government may grant subsidy to local airline or both local and foreign airline as the way of encouraging them and improving on their hit. Such fee payments by airlines that could be subsidized include the airport fees, landing and packaging, en route and overflight charges, ticket sales, charges cargo sales, fine payable for violation of air navigation regulation. Government must also give out grants to the airline to salvage them in terms of difficult times, as it happened during the time of the of the problem that erupted at September 11, 2001. That was the attack at that time that declined the numbers of people that are patronizing air transportation. The routes in which they must be able to adapt to. Certificates restrict operation to specific routes must be granted to anyone that is into air transport. This may be done to regulate entry and competition, thus providing balanced services between all major airports in the nation. It may also be used to encourage airlines to develop new routes instead of concentrating on the highly profitable route only. Then rate. Regulation of rates of common carrier is extensive in many countries. This is necessitated by the need to avoid unjust and unreasonable, or justly discriminating or unduly preferential rates, fare and charges. Airlines are forbidden to charge or demand a rate or fare that differ from those specified in the currently effective tariff. They cannot just come up with any tariff of their choice. They must be able to adapt to the specified tariff, and at the same time the government may grant subsidy to local airlines or to both local and foreign airlines as a way of encouraging them and improving on their yield. Such payable by airline that could be subsidized include the airport fees, the landing, packaging en route and overflight charges, ticket sales, charges, cargo sales and charges, fine payable for violation of air navigation regulation. Government should also provide. While we are discussing, there are 6 freedoms that is being given to anyone that is into air transportation. Such freedom are: number 1, the right of the aircraft to transit or overfly the Nigerian airspace without landing. 2, there is a right to land for technical reason, such as fuel or repair, but not to pick up load or passengers. At the same time, they have a freedom to carry traffic from home country to a foreign country. And the 4th one, they have the right to carry homeward from any foreign country. And the 5th one is the freedom to carry traffic between the foreign country, foreign nation B to foreign nation C. Lastly, they also have the right to carry traffic to foreign nation B through Nigeria to foreign nation C, and the right to carry the traffic within the territory of a foreign nation. These are all the freedom that is applicable to all the air transports. However, there is a need for them to also have the knowledge that that can be or like an hindrance or a failure to accept the above freedom that I have made mention above. So failure to accept the above freedom has forced nations to adopt what we call bilateralism and to go for negotiate with one another for permission to enjoy the privilege referred to as above, such as agreement between the two nations is called bilateral air service agreement, which is being referred to as BASA. Then there's another one that is referred to as a multilateral agreement. This one involves more than 2 countries that are beginning to emerge largely due to cooperations of world nations and the work of International Air Transport Agency, which is being referred to as IATA, and Civil Aviation Organization, which is ICAO. With all what I have just discussed above, the most or part of what is important is the safety and control measure, which must be put into consideration. All over the nation, The world normally puts in place certain safety and control measures to accompany the economic regulation. The measures vary from country to country, but generally the measures include the plans and policy with respect to the use of airspace, the insurance of air traffic rules governing the flight of aircraft to ensure safety of the aircraft and efficient utilization of the airspace, standards governing the design, the constructions and the performance of aircraft, engine appliances and inspections of services thereof, reserve supply of fuel and oil carried in flight, the maximum hour of services of airmen, and the issuance of airmen certificate, that is airworthiness for craft, and the suspensions, revocations and modification. All these are what are expected of them, of the safety and control measures that must be applied to ensure that things work the way it ought to work. Then we are talking of a national legal requirement. There are basic legal requirements which proprietors of airline businesses must meet in Nigeria before their carrier are allowed to fly. And these are: number one, the requirement of a license. The Civil Aviation Air Transport License Regulation, which came into force of 1st of December 1965 in Nigeria, that one make it comprehensive and set of provisions for the licensing of those who wish to carry out the businesses of using aircraft for carry passengers to cargo by air. It is unlawful to carry out an airline business without an operating business. Principal officers of such an airline company will be held personally liable unless they can prove that the was committed without their consent. The requirement for flying: an aircraft shall not fly in Nigeria unless it has all the following: it has a certificate of airworthiness issued by the ministers of air transport, and also it must possess a certificate of maintenance issued by the aircraft maintenance engineer or aircraft radio maintenance engineer, and it must also be equipped as to comply with the law of the country in which it is registered, and to enable lights and markets and marking to be displayed and signal to be made. And also it must be able to equip with radio apparatus to enable communication to be made and the aircraft to be navigated. It carries logbook which will enable them to record their in and out, the time of taking off and where they want to go, and a flight crew of the numbers and the descriptions required by the law of the country. Loading: before an aircraft is loaded, a supervisor shall ensure that the distribution is done in the following way: the load may safely be carried on flight, any condition subject to which the certificate of airworthiness was issued. Pre-flight actions: the commander or pilot of an aircraft shall satisfy himself inter alia before the aircraft take off. Number one, the flight can be safely be made, taking into account the latest information available as to the route and the aerodrome to be used. The weather reports and the forecast available must be reasonable seen, reasonable accepted and adopted, and any alternative courses of action which can be adopted in case the flight cannot be completed as planned. That the aircraft is in every way fit for the intended flight. That the load carried by the aircraft is of such weight and is so distributed and secured that it may be safely be carried on the intended flight. That sufficient fuel and oil and engine coolant is required. That pre-flight check system has been compiled with by each member of the crew. These are all the things that they need to do. That is pre-flight actions. All what they need to check, they have to ensure that the flight check system has been complied by each member of the crew. They have to ensure that there is sufficient fuel, oil and engine coolant. They have to make sure that the aircraft is in a very well fit for the intended flight that is about to go, and also they have to ensure the safety and taking into account the latest information available as to the route and aerodrome to be used. They have to also have the knowledge of the weather report and forecast that is available, or if there is any alternative courses of action which they might adopt in case the flight cannot be completed as it has been. The fatigue of flight crew and the pilot. Every operation shall ensure that members of the flight crew are afforded such periods to rest that their work and duties are not likely to cause them fatigue while flying in the aircraft, as may endanger the safety of the aircraft. Hence, every airline operator shall establish for every members of crew thereof. The fatigue of flight crew and pilots still continue. The limit of this aggregate of all this flight time during every period of 30 days consecutively. Limit on his flying duty period and minimum rest period which they are to have immediately before any flight. All these needs are what must be put into consideration. This is to avert accident problems that might emerge and cause loss of lives. Use of aerodromes or airports. An aircraft shall not land or take off from any place in Nigeria other than a government aerodrome airport, a licensed aerodrome or airport, a place authorized by the Minister for use of aerodrome. It is not like a transport, like a park, where anyone could create a park. What they are trying to say is that it is only the government aerodrome, is only the government or the licensed aerodrome or airport, or the one that is being authorized by the Minister for the use of the aerodrome, that can use the aerodrome airport. The tutor mark assignment is that what do you understand by economic regulation in air transport? Then list and discuss any four economic regulation you know. Then what are the requirements for flying in Nigeria? Then how do the license could be obtained in Nigeria? These are the students' assessments that must be answered. In summary, the government may grant subsidy to local airline or to both local and foreign airline as a way of encouraging them and improving on their yield. Such fees payable by airlines that could be subsidized include airport fees, landing and parking, en route and overflight charge, ticket sales charges, cargo sales charges, fine payable for violations of air navigation regulation. Government could also give out rights grants to the airline to salvage them in terms of difficulties, as it were in the US at that time during the outbreak at 2021 September 11 attack and the consequence of decline in the passenger traffic and aviation business generally.